Hello, friends. Welcome to our panel discussion. Reimagining Insurance, the next normal. My name is Bhaskar Kalita. I'll be your moderator. Most visible common denominator in the last 18 months have been the use of modern tech to keep critical businesses afloat, create touchless processes, so much so that they are now the new normal. And it's not just to haves. So today in our discussion, we're going to talk to three change agents who have kind of driven these changes in their own respective businesses and also for their customers, and discuss various facets around it. So first up, Dan Lopez, welcome to our show. Vice President Digital Services at Aflac, responsible for all the work you do around AI, data and integration. Would you like to give us a little bit of background about what you do and what things you drive at Aflac?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. So at Aflac, it's not only data, machine learning, AI, but my service area spans across robotics, workflows, those platforms, cross business services like document generation, content management, and then we also serve our intranet for our employees through our services. So I have a great team. Team is really powerful. It really supports our needs there.
Thank you, Dan. Welcome. Arun, welcome to our panel discussion. Arun is the Vice President and Head of Data at Berkshire and Hathaway Homestead Companies. Arun, would you like to give us a little bit of background about what you do?
Sure. Thanks, BK. Good to be here. And I manage data analytics for Berkshire Hathaway.
And we've got Raghu Hariharan, co-founder Quantiphi. Quantiphi is a AI-first digital engineering company focused on solving problems at the heart of the business. So, Raghu, you want to give us a little bit of background about the history of Quantiphi and things that we do at the marketplace?
Sure. Thank you, BK. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see a lot of faces after several months of sitting in the corner of a basement. So it feels really good to be here. Just from a Quantiphi perspective, we founded this company in 2013 with the core focus being on AI, machine learning, and data, and that's all we do. So we will talk more about where we are today as we proceed through some of these questions.
Thank you, Raghu. So let's jump straight into it. First question, I'll start with Dan. Let's talk about Main Street. In the last 18 months, can you give us a little bit of background about the impact that you have seen in the Main Street from a customer standpoint, from a producer standpoint, agent standpoint, and how have your business kind of adapted themselves in the last 18 months?
So 2020 versus 2021 are almost different years, but the same problem, right? So I would say starting in 2020, where no one really predicted what was going to happen, and if you did, I'd really like to see that model. I'd like to play the lotto with it because I don't think anybody could have. But first was really about pivoting away from what was the normal, if you will. So it was taking care of our employees, taking care of our agents, taking care of our customers. It wasn't a secret sauce that companies needed to do to pivot. If you take care of your if you take care of your employees, you take care of your agents, they will take care of your customers. But you had to make sure that you could enable the work from home. You got to make sure you could pivot in the right way to make it comfortable to work from home. The model shifted, obviously, for our agents, particularly on the payroll side and what we call our individual business or traditional, where they were, high touch, in person, meeting with business owners, then doing enrollments on site. It completely flipped the model for them. So that virtual enablement was huge, right? Additionally, the business itself had to look at what were the impacts from the fact that we're no longer receiving the same amount of premium. The new sales are going down. How do you manage that expense ratio? So many things changed for us. Mainly was really, now what do we do? Right? Where do you pivot? What do you prioritize in that year to ensure that you're enabling your business in a whole new world?
Arun, what's your take on this?
Sure. I mean, Dan summarized very eloquently exactly what majority of the companies have kind of gone through. I would echo some of his sentiments. The two assets any company would have goes true for us as well. Customers and employees. You really got to focus on them. You really got to take care of those two assets. From my perspective, in addition to what Dan just mentioned, I do believe COVID impact was there was some short-term impact that we kind of like had to deal with in 2020, like, kind of like what Dan mentioned, going into 100% remote workforce and kind of managing, your employees' health and well-being, things along those lines, and also kind of focusing on your customers. But I believe that there's going to be some long-term effects. And a lot of focus this year for us has been on how do you manage that? How do you kind of prepare yourself for another catastrophe like this? It could be another, pathogen like this. It could be a cyber, attack that can shut us down. So things along those lines have been on our minds quite a bit, in 2021, because we've kind of gotten used to it. It's unbelievable. It's been almost 2 years since COVID came to the U.S., and we kind of like gotten used to it now. I would say focus now is, customer needs are changing. So how do we, align? How do we kind of adapt to that and make sure that we are kind of like serving them? What was working before COVID may not work right now. For example, more digital transformation, digital capabilities are now at the forefront. How we did business before is going to be very different going forward. A lot more, focus on capability. So, what we didn't do back then is now becoming prime important. Just like any other company, I mean, there's like articles out there. Like any other company, our digital transformation went on a fast track. We were working on some of those things, but 2020 and 2021, we've been putting a lot of our digital applications and digital strategies on fast track. Talent management and talent retention is becoming a problem. That's going to continue going forward. I think that's going to be one of the long-term lingering effect of COVID, the whole mass resignation and kind of employees looking inward and focusing on what's more important to them. So we need to kind of make sure we acknowledge that and as leaders and see how we can help doing some of those things, right? Last but not least, look at our competition, because now competition has also increased quite a bit. What we are doing, most likely our competition is doing that as well. So how do we kind of stay competitive, and how do we make sure that we're providing value to our consumers and our customers? And I would say, more and more focus is being put on agile and like business agility, because this I think was a wake-up call for a lot of us. And I think, now a lot of us were caught unguarded, and we were unprepared. But I think a lot more focus is going on. How do you stay prepared? How do you handle something like this going forward if something were to happen like this? But I think it's also opening up some new opportunities because, like I said, customer needs are changing. So, for example, delivery business boomed in the last couple of years or so, Ubers and DoorDash and all of those things. So there's a lot of opportunity for insurance in those sectors. And now everybody's kind of going back to normal. So I do expect some new opportunities to kind of come up as well.
Great. Thank you, Arun. Raghu, you've been talking to a lot of customers. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar to what both Dan as well as Arun has mentioned. But from our business perspective, as we serve customers, specifically in the insurance sector, what I feel is they're pre-COVID, like during 2019, 2018, most of our customers were trying out and doing more of proof of concept type work in the AI and machine learning space. What COVID has done for us, fortunately, is that all of these have got accelerated to move into production-based systems. So that's great, right? So we are seeing so much of proof of concepts turning into real-life answers, right, as solutions. So therefore, what we have done as a business on our side is this acceleration that's happening in the digital transformation, the way we deliver services has changed. We've become much more solution-centric so that we can accelerate it. So there'll be, let's say, if we are going to be part of, let's say, claims transformation journey, right? The ability for us to bring in solutions around, document AI, right? As a solution by itself and accelerate the whole journey for them, right? Is the model that we are following. So that is changing the way we are doing our work as well. And to Arun's point, agility, I would say accelerated agility today. I've been in the IT services sector for close to 25 years. But what I see now is I haven't seen a project which doesn't give some kind of output, a business outcome. From the kickoff, maximum is 6 months, right? There are gone are those days where a project would take 2 years to implement and people are waiting for it. So the agility with business outcome in an accelerated fashion has been the model, and then we have completely adopted to that. So, and then in terms of, the talent aspect as well, we'll cover it in detail, but then, that is also an interesting challenge that all of us are facing, and there are very unique ways of delivering it as well.
Thanks, Raghu. All three of you spoke about tech, right? So let's switch to tech. So Dan, with businesses, business model changing, what's been the technology backbone to support it? I mean, can you give us a little bit of insights into the type of strategic initiatives or thought process that you guys are putting in place?
Yeah, so I'm going to piggyback off where Arun was. You switch the model on the digital service side from kind of your core platform replacement transformation to what's digital. How does digital enable your business? Where's your speed to delivery and to value? Where does it come from? So it was really, there was a balancing act because we had these core transformation programs going, and we're saying, okay, we're invested. Where do you strategically say that's the right, and I'll use the plane analogy, that's the right plane to keep flying, but you have to land it soon enough. Which digital programs and data programs and analytic programs do you take off in the speed that you need to take to enable your business? So for instance, we already had a digital transformation roadmap ready to go. But when the pandemic hit, it was like a switch. It's like, okay, we have to look at which one of these we start now. And in the same way you were saying, Raghu, is which ones give us value? So for instance, Aflac was already starting with the direct-to-consumer market. So you think about the Ubers and et cetera that don't sit in a normal payroll situation. That was just a seed kind of starting in 2020, and it's taken off for us there. You look at the way that agents interact, right? So how do you create that virtual personalization? Because they're no longer in front of the business owner. They're no longer in front of the enrollee. So how do you use digital to create those microsites? How do you personalize the microsites? Do you do suggestive selling? So those things started to accelerate for us. On the customer side, it was strategically tactical things that we could do. How do we take the pressure off your call center and your claims specialists? How do you use chat? And sometimes it was the quick learn. Enable, go out, figure out what's working, what's not working, make your changes, bring it back, and continue to evolve. And then behind all that is obviously data. So where do you get that information from? Going back to system of record and it's not there all the time from a mainframe perspective. So where do you go? How do you digitize information from your documents to really glean out that value add data that's going to enable the next level of capability? And so that's really where the pivot happened. Now, it doesn't happen overnight. It's been happening over 18 months, but it was always interesting conversations on where are we going to make the bet, right? Being in Vegas, pun intended, but literally where are you placing your chips on to deal with today while you're still solving for tomorrow.
Arun, similar thoughts from a digital strategy standpoint?
Yeah. Looks like, Dan is my brother. I would echo a lot of what Dan mentioned. In addition to that, I would say what COVID has done and what this will continue to do in the coming years is an increased pressure on IT teams across the board. Whether you're a big company, small company, doesn't matter, because your business strategies are now 100% going to be technology focused. I can't remember the last time technology was this much of a focus, this much of a forefront in boardroom discussions than in the last, I would say, at least 6 months or so. So IT teams are under pressure. I would also see a shift going forward in more customer-facing applications, user enablements. I would also see more focus on SaaS and PaaS type of models for applications. I don't believe we're going to be successful in the long term if we continue to do build everything from scratch. Microservices and SaaS type of models are going to be more ubiquitous going into the future. And I would definitely think that cloud and cloud providers play a big role in the immediate future and also in the long-term future. And amongst all of these things, one thing that's been common for us is making sure that whatever we're building, whatever strategy we have, security is at the top of the list. Because there was a recent article where they were talking about like the spike in cyber, crimes and cyber attacks, and this has been a prime opportunity for some of those guys. So, how do you do, with increased pressure, with everybody working remotely, and with all this mass resignations going on, and you still have to run your business, and there's more focus on the bottom line. Security tends to become, one of those things that if you forget that, a single data breach can cost you millions of dollars. So those are the things that are on our minds as leaders, and those will probably be on our minds for the near future.
Thanks, Arun. Raghu, switching to you, any thoughts on how Quantiphi has been supporting customers in the last 18 months from a tech strategy standpoint?
Yeah, so I think the core of what we do itself, I think we're fortunate to be in the space where the type of services and the technology solutions that we deliver is going to be the new normal. So that is, I'm pretty excited and happy about that aspect, right? So where we have been spending most of our time, our customers have been investing, have been one on conversational AI. It's across industry segments, more so in the insurance as well. As a matter of fact, then when COVID hit, even beyond insurance, right? This became a big deal because doing things virtually was very important. So what we actually did the conversational AI bots implementation for several states in the US for unemployment related stuff, right? In partnership with Google, right? So it was an amazing outcome. Similar stuff from then onwards has actually started entering into all the areas, and so in insurance as well. So conversational AI is a big area. We have almost like quadrupled our revenue stream from conversational AI in the last 12 months. The second one is document AI, right? So you can see a pattern that this is about how virtual working and things are actually enabling some of these things. So document AI has been an area where we're doing a lot of different solutions focused on be it claims policy in any of those areas, right? It's being implemented quite accelerated fashion. Then underlying data solutions and infrastructure, right? As Arun mentioned, things moving into cloud, a lot of work in that area that have been helping our customers. And more than all of these, I would say at every step of these kind of implementations, all of the thought process around how do we make sure the technology transformations that are happening in the marketplace are being brought to our customers much more faster. So if you see an average innovation rate of change, right, that's happening in the market, you would find that you pretty much have to be focusing on what's happening every week from an innovation perspective. We can actually take those and deliver to our customers, right? Be it in research labs, be it in universities, be it some of the researchers who are coming out with amazing solutions, specifically in the AI/ML space, being able to capture it and make it into more productionizable solutions, right? That is something which is we're helping a lot of our customers with.
Thank you.
Can I ask him a question? You mentioned that you're seeing an uptick in AI projects and AI models. Just curious, are you seeing one industry more than any other industry in terms of more applications of AI?
Yeah, I would say the number one industry segment for us, honestly, is healthcare and life sciences in our space. Tremendous amount of innovation that you can see the outcome and output of it, in the form of accelerated vaccine, being brought into the market. So, but every single space, right? If you take it, the power of computer vision to deep learning models to things like what you call knowledge graphs and things of these areas, tremendously used in the healthcare and life sciences space. Right? So that is one thing I would say doing really a leap forward. But insurance has always been a follower, which all of us know. But I can say that this time it looks like the acceleration of that follow-up is much more faster than in the past. So that's pretty exciting.
Right. So let's get down to some specifics. So I'll start with Dan. Right. Let's talk about specific programs. Any key initiatives that you have driven in the last year or so, which is where AI has been the backbone in terms of making fundamental changes.
So for Aflac, multiple I guess, over the last 18 months that really allowed us to look at it kind of two different ways. There's kind of your advanced analytics and that group of talent that says, I need to really determine how to use ML to drive better models for the business, better prediction, churn models, staffing, et cetera. So we've seen an uptake there, and we had to make investments in our ML ops capabilities across the board, right? But then you look at, okay, from an enterprise perspective, how do we change to become an intelligent enterprise product across digital service? And so where we, from an insurance perspective, you start to look at, there's multiple places of impact that you can focus on. But for Aflac, it was really around claims, right? So I've done multiple claim transformations prior to Aflac, different companies, and this is the first company I've been at where we're actually looking at our customers and saying, file a claim. Now we have, everybody wants to have great customer service, but we're asking our customers to file a claim. And to be able to change the model underneath to be an intelligent enterprise, we started looking at, okay, we have to stop thinking about kind of your traditional core platforms, administrative platforms, kind of standard rules engine, and really use machine learning and AI to push a dynamic way to adjudicate and do that auto adjudication. And you think of auto adjudication and you're like, well, that's happened in P&C 20 years ago. They started down this path and you get into the commercial space. But in the voluntary space, it's been different, right? It's been a lot of high touch, and that's been the customer service. Now it's really moving into that intelligent adjudication. So leveraging document and AI, figuring out how to use graphs to look at policy information, our manuals, regulatory, the actual event, and the information that comes in with the event, and being able to stitch that together to make that very specific event dynamic in the way that you adjudicate. Now, is it a silver bullet? No. We still have to evolve, and we have to do, kind of that human assisted with the machine led, and we're still learning how to use it. But I think that's where it's going. And as you said, Raghu, maybe insurance wasn't always first there, but it's interesting to see a leap from very traditional to accelerating machine learning in a way that's been very dynamic, and kind of the curve has been very accelerated over the last 18 months.
So a follow-up here. So you talked about, auto adjudication, looking at graphs, looking at policy documents. Can this whole technology or the model that you have put together for claims, can it be replicated for enrollments? Can it be replicated for other parts of the value chain?
So yeah, now the conversation is, how do you prioritize where you point it? Right, where are you going to go next with it? There's ample opportunity within the walls of Aflac of the next place, but then there's also your stakeholder management, right, where they think it's going to solve everything. And so you have to always balance on how you use technology and the way you use it. So I would say, we're looking at, obviously, policy administration. We're looking at underwriting. We're moving up the chain to enrollment based on prioritization. But the one area that we really need to focus on, being an insurance company, is making sure that it's not a magic box. It's not a black box where something goes in and comes out. Regulators are not going to They're not going to accept that. They're going to want to know exactly what's going on and how you can trace all the decision assist versus human, decisions, et cetera. So for us, it's exciting to see what's next. We want to make sure that we don't go too fast, where you're going to trip over things that may not be welcomed in the insurance industry. So there's that balance.
Right. So Arun, moving on to you, question on cloud data platforms. You've been pioneering a lot of cloud data platforms in your stint in Liberty Mutual, now at Berkshire. Thoughts about cloud data platforms and how they have actually helped streamline operational reporting for the carriers?
Sure. We are a little bit late to the cloud, but I've been told that Berkshire, that's nothing new. So we still early stage adopters of cloud, and COVID put us behind a little bit because, like I said, IT focus shifted from cloud and some of the other things to more work from home and remote apps and things along those lines. So in any case, we just started a cloud data platform strategy, our roadmap. It's about an 18-month roadmap just to kind of get us up and running in the cloud. I would say, in general, everything that you hear about cloud is true for us. It's opened up new opportunities for us. It's giving us unlimited scalability that we don't have today, and that's coming at a cost-optimized manner. We're not, that's not making us break the bank, if you will. It's also giving us the ability to experiment cheaply and quickly, because we can actually stand up and provision new services quickly and kind of experiment things without having to spend a significant amount of time. So time to market on everything, whether it is a production app or whether it is experimentation, proof of concept, have been much shorter for us. And the other big thing for us, at least from a Berkshire perspective, I'm sure many of you would agree as well, cloud kind of opens up user empowerment, if you will. Your users can access your apps no matter where they are, perhaps even no matter where they are in the world, as long as you put the right security protocols in place. That wasn't true for us. We were kind of limited to VPN and on-prem apps, network bandwidths, and things along those lines, and we were kind of struggling. So now, as long as you have internet connection and a browser, a lot of our apps are going to be available to you. And most importantly for us, as an insurance carrier, it's opening up the opportunity to integrate with third-party data, which we didn't have before. And we are able to do that quickly and cheaply without having to load data and get the files and things along those lines, which nobody likes to do anymore. All those extended ETL or ELT pipelines, they're kind of vanishing for us, and we can actually embed third-party data into our queries and our data seamlessly. So those are some of the big takeaways for us from a cloud perspective.
Awesome. Raghu, any thoughts on specific programs that you think have made a difference in the last 12, 18 months?
Yeah, I mean, as what Dan and Arun mentioned, we are closely involved in all of those in the space. What I would say is the type of projects that are being delivered right now is actually putting a different type of spin on the challenges. If you take the transformations that have happened in the past when things moved internet and now more towards AI and ML, being able to focus on what we would call as a responsible AI is becoming an important part. So if you dissect what responsible AI means, like the safety, security, and compliance aspects, as Arun was mentioning before, when you actually access all of these things from all of those places, becomes much more important. The second is when you actually deliver models, which are AI and machine learning centric, being able to provide transparency and explainability to what is being done, because AI generally is viewed as like a magic box, and it can do magic, but then the customers and the end consumers don't really like that aspect, so it has to be explainable and has to be explained well. And then things like fairness, bias, etc., that are important, right, to be taken care of while we deliver such solutions. And the most importantly, what we are trying to do with our customers is to collaborate at every step of what we deliver to, in terms of the projects, to ensure that the collaboration includes these aspects in the life cycle of an ML journey, right? From an engineering perspective, right, till the engineering perspective, right? It's not just lip service, not just having a bunch of thought process, but really how do you make sure all of these things, transparency, explainability, the security features are all embedded within each of the solutions that are being delivered now.
Great. I think all of you covered some of the aspects which needs to be taken care of as you start delivering these projects. Next question that I had was around AI at scale and things that we need to take.
Can I throw a curveball at you real quick? Sure. I want to know, Arun, how a data guy doesn't like ETL.
If you do ETL for 30 years.
So, going back to my question, AI at scale, challenges. I think you mentioned a little bit about stakeholder management already. Things that needs to be taken care of, needs to be carefully observed, managed as you start implementing these technologies across the value chain.
It will be a little bit repetitive based on the last answer. You really kind of building on what Raghu said, you have to be responsible with it. But so it's interesting for us when we looked at claims, it wasn't just about the intelligent adjudication, but we looked at it from how do we solve a regulatory problem? How do you solve the tackle from a quality perspective? And we said we can't just solve quality, right? We have to solve and reimagine the process. And so just selecting in the value chain where to apply it first and it's kind of interesting. You almost have to control how far you want to go with it so that you can be responsible, so that you can ensure that you're meeting regulatory and compliance requirements, that you can explain why there's a decision that's being either predicted or assisted on and how you came up with that, right? The great thing about document AI and using the deep learning in that aspect and graphs is you can connect the dots all the way back to, if you think about a policy, well, it's an insurance contract. The contract says this, right? These are the benefits. This is your coverage. You can connect to your standard operating procedures. You can connect to the claim event information, and that's laid out for you. Now, from an analytic perspective or a data space, we love seeing those graphs and we love seeing how dynamic it is. From a customer perspective, it's if you can connect the dots on how you came to the decision and can explain it, right? That is volumes. If you can explain it to your regulators, that just keeps you in good graces. You need to be able to do that. To me, that's probably where I would say that you have to focus on. And then stakeholder management, the reason I say that is there'll be times where they want to push the envelope and say, hey, can you point that here? Can you use that same model to solve this problem? And is it ready? And sometimes it's not, and you have to be able to say it's not ready exactly for that, but give us 4, 6, 8 weeks. Let's try it out. Let's try another proof. Now the expectation is the proof actually turns into the next, application or the next way to use that product, right? And can you control it from a smaller product perspective and then kind of grow it into more of an enterprise solution? So we're still learning. Absolutely, we're absolutely still learning how to traverse these challenges because we haven't solved it for sure. But it is exciting, and I think if we continue to figure out how to take the lessons and the failures and continue to move forward, we'll be able to solve many things with it.
Right. Arun, any thoughts from your side? AI at scale, challenges?
Sure, I got a few points here, but before I answer, can I ask the audience a couple of questions? I want to make sure they don't fall asleep. So can I see a show of hands? How many of you are already in the cloud? Doesn't matter which cloud, but Okay. How many of you are thinking about going to the cloud in the next 12 to 18 months? Okay. How many of you are doing AI in the cloud? Good. So you'll like what I'm about to say here. So we're early stage in AI. We have a couple of models we're looking at. One is a third-party vendor, but a couple of them we're kind of building from scratch. From my perspective, most AI applications, and those of you who raise your hands with the AI question, you'll relate to this, they start out as an experiment or a proof of concept, right? A bunch of data scientists are looking at a problem, and they start building something together, and then they start using some sample data, and then it starts working, it starts producing results, and you start seeing, 95% score or something like that, and you want to productionalize that. And that's when, the question starts coming up. It's like, how do I take this and scale this? So a couple of suggestions, and this is what we're trying to do, and sometimes it's not easy, sometimes it's okay. Every AI project that you start, think about the long-term production, deployment ahead of time. Put it in the plan to begin with, so it'll make your life a lot easier. So that way, you don't spend like 3 months to 6 months in a POC, and now you have another, big question in front of you, and it's going to consume that much more time to kind of productionalize that. So put that in the plan ahead of time. Second thing we're trying to do, which is sometimes it's challenging, make sure that it's not just the data scientists who are working on your AI projects. Make sure you're including your IT partners, make sure you're including your business users and whoever else needs to be in there, because you want to make sure that, they're kind of telling you, for this to go to production, here are some of the things that you need to understand. You need to have scalability, you need to have clean data, you need to have a way to secure it, you need to have a way to provision it, you need to have a way to visualize the results, you need to have a way to kind of draw inferences from an experiment. So a lot of those things are outside of the realm of a true data scientist. And make sure when you're building your AI model, keep traceability and proper documentation, especially in insurance. That becomes very important, because you need to show to compliance how your AI model came up with the numbers, and you need to be able to explain that to them. Otherwise, your rates may not get certified. So that's very key, to make sure that your models are not convoluted and they're not built in some programming language that you cannot kind of like document it. And make sure that you can support unstructured data, because I'm betting that majority of the AI apps will have to do some type of a voice analytics or a text analytics or computer vision analytics and things along those lines. So make sure that upfront you're including that in your architecture. So those are some of my key, thoughts, if you will, to kind of make sure that your model can scale when you're ready and you don't waste too much time on it.
Thanks, Arun. Before I move to the audience for audience questions, I have my last question. This is around skill and talent, right? All of you know this is, these technologies are not easy to implement, and you need the right skill, right talent. So Dan, starting with you, how are you managing talent? How are you getting the right talent to solve these problems?
So this is it's an interesting conversation we're starting to have. Well, we've had, but now it's really become the focus. So first, pure transparencies, we didn't have the skills for it. We still, within the Aflac walls, we had a lot of curiosity, we had a lot of knowledge, right? But the pure skills that you need to really advance these type of models, we had to build. So obviously partnering is kind of the word, but now strategically looking at across digital service, where are we making our bets? What do we believe from within the digital service space at Aflac? What business do we want to be in, right? So what are we going to commoditize? What are we going to say that's okay? We could just be good at that, but we're going to partner. Where are we going to make the bets in terms of core competencies and capabilities? And then how do we leverage the marketplace to do that? So we've implemented a few things. One, we're in Northern Ireland, and we stood up a center there, and we're tapping into talent. We're aggressively going after data, cognitive science, cognitive engineering. We have the engagement layer where we're really interacting with our agent, our customers. But I'm betting that's what everybody's doing here, right? So maybe turn the question around and say, from an audience perspective, how are we solving it? Because we're all going to be ended up in chasing the same talent, right? So maybe I would ask the audience to, what are some of the ideas that you guys are, and what are you implementing to determine how to solve for the talent gap?
Any thoughts?
They're all being stealthy and secretive. They don't want to give it away.
Yeah.
All right, I'll pass it back to you.
So, over to Arun.
Sure. One thing that came out in the last, year and a half is, from an employee perspective, they want flexibility. It was a shocker. We didn't know that employees want flexibility. Different employees are passionate about different things. You read about, the whole mass resignation and whatnot. Most people jump to the conclusion that, people are leaving for the sake of money, but that's not true. When you talk to them, people are leaving for very different reasons, and there is no common theme. Some people want to work from home, but there are reasons for why they want to work from home. Some people are looking for better opportunities, and there are some people who are leaving for money. So as managers, and if you're a manager, you'll relate to this, you got to understand your employees at a more personal level. You can no longer afford to, just manage at a project level and just keep pushing them and measure them on dates and deadlines and QA results and things along those. And those days are gone. Flexibility is key right now. productivity doesn't mean 8 hours in front of the computer. Productivity now, you need to figure out what is productivity for my employee X versus employee Y. That may be very different. So those are the things that we're kind of like figuring it out. And I would say include your employees in the conversation. One big mistake that a lot of managers made in the early on, and I'll confess I was one of them, is I assumed that I had the answers. Don't make that assumption. Ask the employee, what is important to you? What does productivity mean to you? That's the only way you're going to be able to retain talent, and make sure that they understand that they're a key part of the organization, and show them how their contribution helps the bottom line or the top line, or how they're important, serving your ultimate customer, and take out the dollars and cents out of the conversation sometimes. It helps a lot. I would also say you got to prioritize your projects and your business strategies. Assume that people are going to leave, and make sure that you're measuring it and you're kind of running your projects on smaller milestone. Make sure that you get something out to the business, focus on the outcome, and get something quickly and simply as much as possible. And also make sure that there is cross-training. So if you were to, don't create single bottles of neck and that kind of stuff. If one employee quits, you don't want to be in a position where, a whole lot of knowledge is gone to that employee. That puts you in a very vulnerable situation. So make sure that you're kind of like creating some mentorship programs help here. We're kind of like looking into that right now, see how we can actually have senior level employees mentor some of the junior level employees, share the wealth. And automate anything that you can. So that way you take the human factor out of it, and you're not, dependent on somebody's, leaving at any point in time. And many of you can relate, do more with less. That's become the strategy now, right? And how can I do more with fewer employees that I have, and how can I supplement some of my staff with external resources? So I don't have any easy answers, but some of these, or a combination of these, will work depending on your situation. If something doesn't work, try the next strategy. But what has been successful for us, me personally, is engaging the employee and make sure that you're very transparent to them and help them understand what some of the issues you're going through, and understand what is important to them and what issues they're facing, and come up with something that works for both of you.
Right. Over to you, Raghu. How have you seen these problems in the market, and now Quantiphi has been solving them?
Yeah, so just as a background, right? Quantiphi as a business, we have grown close to 200% from end of 2019 to today, right? So we are roughly around 3,300 people. In December 2019, we were probably somewhere around 1,600, right? So
all those people who quit, where they ended up.
So it's been really interesting journey, as we said, in a lot of challenges to take care. So what helped us? I'll tell you what helped us so far, and what we think the future we have to actually continue to do is look at talent from three aspects: capability, capacity, and the consistency of quality of people whom we get in, right? So these three things. So from a capability perspective, we have a very strong partnership with all the technology providers like Google, AWS, Microsoft, Snowflake, and all of them, right? So always be connected with them to create that pool, right? Including a large pool of certified resources in that area. So that's a continuous process. We encourage everybody in the organization to be fully certified. So that is an important aspect that we focus on to make sure that we have the right capability. From a scale and capacity perspective, over the last 18 months, we have consciously gone to markets just to get talent and not necessarily go sell in those markets, right? So we have opened our offices in several cities across the world, right? In Toronto, in UK, and in London actually, and then in Amsterdam, right? And then one of our major center of talent pool is obviously India, and in India we have gone to non-traditional cities today, right? To go find. Now we got to find the talent. We got to go to the places where the talent pool exists. It's not anymore as a business to just look at to go where business exists. Today it's more to go where the talent pool exists. So that is scaling aspect. And then the consistency of quality. We overspend and we overinvest anybody who comes in and looks at our investment as a company, they will find that we overinvest on our recruitment and hiring engine, right? That's because we want to make sure we get the right people. There are a lot of people available, but they got to get the right one, right? So that we spend a lot of time on, and then the third is keeping everybody relevant continuously. So the reason I say that is, it's people talk about reskilling and from the past technologies to the newer technologies, etc. But what I feel is people are jumping in first time into the technology of AI and ML has to be relevant almost on a weekly basis. So being able to give them all the necessary tools and techniques for them to be always relevant, that is important. So we put a lot of effort on that as well.
Thank you, Raghu. Got 5 minutes left. We want to open it up for the audience. Any questions? Got hands out there.
Hi, I was just curious how you solve the problem for garbage in, garbage out, where the user is in charge of the data. Oftentimes that could be the biggest problem and stops the whole process from working. What do you do with that?
Want to take it?
Yeah.
Sure. I've been nominated to answer this question, so
Got rid of ETL.
that's a good question, and that's been. That question has been on a lot of data platforms and a lot of data projects for a long time, right? There's definitely the issue of data quality. So I would say start with the proper data governance and kind of make sure that there's some right principles in place to measure the data and make sure that the right data is going in. Especially if that data is being provisioned for an AI model, you risk the possibility of getting an incorrect outcome and then an incorrect inference being drawn out of that. So data quality becomes really important. There are some checks and balances that you can kind of put in. Involve your business users as much as possible. If there's anybody that knows what your premium was as of yesterday, that should be your business. And how much we paid in claims in the last month, that should be your business. And make sure that they're involved and there's a process in place for them to kind of review it and cleanse it. Beyond that, you may have to come up with there are some really nice and slick ML algorithms these days to kind of help cleanse the data quality issues or at least triage them, especially if you have massive volumes of data. Automate that if at all possible to kind of catch those issues. But at the end of the day, you got to go back to the source. Governance will help you kind of go back to that source and clean it at the source.
So one of the things we have found is, what AI and ML has done, we have had this conversation with a lot of customers, right? Where do you even find, how are you sure that it's garbage data, right? For people so AI and ML has this unique opportunity for us to surface, right, data as such, and that allows you to actually quickly understand if there is really garbage or not, right? So that is an advantage of leveraging AI and ML. So as part of the life cycle of it, anything we deliver in this space, the whole sub-phase, what we call as data understanding, before we actually get into really modeling and things, that surfaces up, right, some of the problems. That can then be, linked back into the governance, which Arun, you talked about. So that is one of the ways, it is helping right now.
Just to add to it, right, we talked about unstructured data. So this problem gets amplified when you start dealing with unstructured data, images, documents. So it's extremely important that you annotate data properly. You have right touch points with business to understand the context of your unstructured data. So one of the ways to solve the problem is to make sure when you are fetching the data upfront, going to Arun's point is about to the source. Make sure you are working with business very closely as you start feeding some of those data into your models.
Having said all of this, as a pragmatist, I don't want you to be disappointed, but I don't think you'll ever be able to get rid of bad data from your systems. If you set that expectation, you're going to be, brutally disappointed. So I would say figure out a way to manage it, figure out a way to keep it low, figure out a way to kind of control that. It's like traffic issues. You can never get rid of traffic issues.
Any other questions? Got a hand raised.
Hello. So this question goes to Dan. So you said that when you ask insurers to file claims, by the way, I love that. My organization is all about their customer cares. What business benefits delivered, and then what was the claims cost impact?
Sorry, so just clarification, you said business benefits and?
What kind of business benefits delivered, and then what was the impact of the claims cost?
So the question is business benefits and claim costs.
So we'll have to get back to you on the claim cost, but we do have a specific target on dropping the claim cost at an individual unit level. But I will tell you, so it's three things, right? So we're focused on reducing our claim costs. We have an efficiency target in terms of not just that, but our turnaround and clearing our claims backlog. But more importantly, we're looking at outcome. So from a claim perspective, the outcome is very important to us. So it has to be accurate and correct, and it has to meet the needs of both the customer as well as the targets that we're setting to maintain a good standing with all our regulatory and compliance offices. So those three things are always top of mind. So when we measure, when do we take a model out? When is it ready? You're never going to have 100% accuracy, right? But can you get to a conformance level of 95, 97, 98 when you have the model plus the human? And so we always looked at it from that total claim outcome first, and then you would then you get into your efficiency targets and your cost targets. But we had to prioritize in that fashion to get there. But just like every other project, we have a very specific business case that says we need to take the cost down from X to Y. But that doesn't supersede the outcome. The claim outcome is priority for us.
Awesome. So that brings us to the end of a lively conversation. Dan, Arun, Raghu, thank you.
Yeah, sure, it's lively for us. Hopefully it was lively for all of you there as well. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Everybody have a safe trip back home.